Bhagavad Gita session. Yeah, I will go ahead and start the recording. Yeah, thank you. Over to you, Nitinji. Radhe Radhe.
Thank you, Pallaviji. Thank you, Gayatri and Padmini for a wonderful session. Beautiful dohas to round up the session. So, good morning, good evening, everybody. A very warm welcome to today's edition of Daily Wisdom from Bhagavad Gita. Today, we'll continue on the shloka we started off yesterday, 4.26, and we are going to talk about the contradictory approaches that are laid out in our scriptures. What we spoke about yesterday, we will put that in perspective today. All the Varanasharam Theorem, and for that matter, the categorizations of human society, why they are done, and we'll see it in perspective, okay, how much importance they need to be assigned. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen and we will get started with our opening prayers like we always do. I share my screen. All right, so let's get started with our opening prayers. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Ishwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsuchanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Right, Radhe Radhe, good morning, good evening once again to all of you. A very warm welcome. Let's get started. I'm going to recite it and then you are welcome to follow along. Kshotrādīnindriyāṇyanye Sanyamagneshu juhvati Shabdādīn Vishayananya Indriyagneshu juhvati. All right, I can see a few hands. Let's get started.
Samji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Shrotrādīnindriyāṇyanye samyamagnishu juhvati shabdādīn vishayāṇyanya indriyagnishu juhvati. Radhe Radhe.
I think your shades get the credit as well. So very nice. Thank you.
Nice shades, yeah, Samji.
Yes.
Sri Ramya ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Shrotrādīnindriyāṇanye Sanyamagnishu juhvati Shabdādīn Vishayāṇanya Indriyagnishu juhvati.
Thank you. Shiramit.
Palji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Payal.
Radhe Radhe. Shotrandindriyāṇyanye Sanyamagnishu juvati Shabdādin Vishayananya Indriyagnishu juvati. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Dinesh ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Shotrādīnindriyāṇanye Sanyamagnishu juvati Shabdādī Vishayananya Indriyagnishu juvati. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe, very nice. Dinesh ji. Okay, we can take a few more hands.
Venkat ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Pallaviji, Radhe Radhe. Nitin ji.
Radhe Radhe.
Shrotrādīnindriyāṇyanye Samyamagnishu juhvati Shabdādīn Vishayananya Indriyagnishu juhvati. Radhe Radhe.
Nice, Venkat ji. Radhe Radhe.
Akshita ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Gitaji, Radhe Radhe.
राधे राधे श्रोतादीनिन्द्रियानन्ये संयमाग्निषु जुह्वति शब्दादि विषयानन्या इन्द्रियाग्निषु जुह्वति राधे राधे
Radhe Radhe, very nice. All right, we have 2 more hands.
Ashutosh ji, Radhe Radhe, please
3
go
more
ahead.
hands. 4 more.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Ashutosh ji.
श्रोत्रादीनीन्द्रियाण्यन्ये संयमाग्निषु जुह्वति शब्दादीन् विषयानन्य इन्द्रियाग्निषु जुह्वति.
Wonderful. Nice, Ashutosh ji.
Radhi ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe.
Shotradini indriyanyane sayama agnishu juvati shabdadini vishanyane indriya agnishu juvati.
Nice, Pragi ji. Okay, we have last 3. We can take these 3.
Manju ji, Radhe Radhe, please
Radhe
go ahead.
Radhe Radhe ji.
Radhe Radhe. Manju ji.
Shotradinya indriyanne संयमाग्निषु जुह्वति शब्दादीन विषयानन्ये इन्द्रियाग्निषु जुह्वति.
Very nice. Where are you joining us from, Manju ji?
California, San Francisco area.
Okay, okay. Is the first time you're reciting?
Yeah, this is first time, Ji.
All right. You are in the running for the best debut award in that case. So very nice.
Thank
Love
you,
to
Ji.
hear from you more often. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Radhe Radhe, Riya ji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Shotradhin indriyananye sanyamagnishu juvati shabdadin vishayananya indriyagnishu juvati.
Very
Radhe
nice.
Radhe.
Ji, Radhe Radhe.
Ankur ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Ankur ji.
Radhe Radhe. Shotradinindrayananye sanyam magnishu juvati shabdadi vishananya indra yagnishu juvati. I'm not good at
No
Hindi.
worries. You tried well though. Is it your first time as well, Ankur ji?
No, not first time, but I was reciting first time. I've been consistently attending your classes.
Okay.
Actually, this is my office timings, and so just.
I know we need to have an offline conversation on Guru Tattva. Okay, I have not forgotten it. But yeah, very nice. So Manju ji gets the best debut award today. So let's get started. Short translation for this goes like, others offer hearing and other senses in the sacrificial fire of restraint. Sacrificial fire of restraint. We spoke about sacrifice, restraining senses on all the 4 Varanasharam Theorem yesterday, right? And then furthermore, it says still others offer sound and other objects of the senses as sacrifice in the fire of the senses. Now, sacrifice in the fire of the senses, what does that mean? Sacrifice in the fire of the senses itself. That is what we will discuss today. So yesterday we spoke at length about the Varanasharam Theorem. It's important to understand that, and today we will put it in place. So let's get started. We spoke about this concept that a seed is a seed until it gets the required conducive circumstances, and then it starts sprouting. And similarly, when we forcefully restrain our senses or our desires, it's just a matter of time before they will rear their ugly head again. Okay, forcefully we can do only so much. And great yogis like Vishwamitra story we saw as well. There's another one, Saubari Muni, we'll not get into that. We've seen enough examples in our scriptures to tell us that just because you think you have restrained something doesn't mean the seeds are burnt for that as well. Okay. And then we looked at the Varanasharam Theorem aspect as well. Let's look at it. So this is the forcibly, when we restrain our senses, then they can come back, sprout back again. And it can happen even after 30, 40 years. Okay, you might have done a practice for such a long time, but when the opportunity will present, you will be surprised to see, you still had that seed somewhere there. Then we looked at this, the Varnashram Dharma aspect of it. Quick summary for that. If you look at the buzzword was training and restraining senses throughout. The buzzword is not about do this. It is more about we have to restrain it. It's almost like if you understand the deeper meaning around it, they are saying you restrain it, you restrain it. It's like you go to a chain smoker and tell him quit smoking. You think that person, the likelihood of that person listening to you is more when you tell quit smoking, or you tell him, okay, have at least 1 or 2 a day, okay, restricted to that level. So the chances or likelihood of that person listening and understanding would be higher. Similarly, if you look at the underlying message, it's all about restraint. Okay, that means that is a big picture around this whole thing. So if you look at this entire Varnashram Dharma aspect of it, let's look at it. Now, human society, it's actually divided. If you look at it, we spoke about Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, now Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanpras, Sannyas, all that divisions are there. They are just a means. It's a systematic division of the society for systemized sense gratification. If you look at it, they're not saying don't do it. It's just a restraining it. So they have tried to put some, it's like rather than having an unbridled traffic, let's put some traffic lights there. Okay, that is the whole idea. So we don't have to pay too much attention to that. Okay, that is the bottom line. Now let's get into the real stuff. This is for people who want to enjoy human life. So our scripture is saying, all right, at least exercise restraint as per the station in which your life is in, right? If you're a brahmacharya, follow this, if you do that. But the key message is you need to restrain your senses. And that is where our scriptures talk about some paths which will enable this journey. And that is what we are going to spend our time on. So we don't have to pay too much attention to it, that you have to go through all these stages, or you go from one stage to another and you can't jump. No, people can go from brahmacharya direct to sannyas as well based on their sanskar. It's not mandatory to go through any of these stages, or you will go to narak, right? As people would have you believe. If you don't do that, you will go to narak. No, nothing like that. So now let's move into the actual aspect of it, the diametric approaches that we've been talking about. So this is what we are going to look at, right? One is going in one direction, the other is going in completely other direction. Although the goal is the same, the means are entirely different. And what are these diametrically opposite approaches to spiritual elevation is what we are going to take a look at today. Okay, so let's get started. Now, fire, we know, right? It's one of the pratyaksha devatas, right? When it's one of the 5 elements. We take oath on fire, we hold somebody's feet to fire, and then the fire is something that purifies anything that is offered to it. Fire never gets dirty. Whatever you offer to fire, that thing becomes pure. Now, if you look at external rituals here, Vedic sacrifices, it physically consumes oblations offered to it. A lot of sacrifices, yagyas, are centered around that as well. And the external practice is around fire. And in the internal practice, spirituality, fire is symbolic. This is the fire of self-discipline, which burns the desires of the senses. Okay, so that self-discipline, it says it burns the. Now this is what we are going to look at. What is it that we can do in terms of oblations or practices which are going to help us restrain our mind and senses? So these are the 2 approaches, completely opposite approaches. Okay, we'll start with the first one. Here, the focus is on negation of the senses. Negate it, deny it, forcibly deny it. This is called Hatha Yoga. Hut, right? Bal hut, they say. And somebody becomes stubborn. Now you become stubborn in denying your senses. So you suspend the actions of your senses, just indulge them for the bare maintenance of the body, and you withdraw your mind. You make introvert, it's like those the feet and head of the tortoise, when it senses danger, it just withdraws everything inside the shell. So that is essentially what is done in this practice. In Hatha Yoga, you are employing your willpower to restrain your senses and mind. So this practice is called Hatha Yoga. Okay, this is now let's connect the dots here. The focus of life is human life is not to indulge completely. And that is why there are certain ashrams or stations created to regulate it. Okay. However, somebody who has understood the purpose of life, now they have paths. Okay, regardless of which station of life you are in, these are the two ways through which you can restrain your senses when it becomes your sole goal. Okay. The first one is the Hatha Yoga we spoke about. And the second one is Bhakti Yoga. Okay. In this case, in this kind of a yagna, you make your senses to indulge or behold the glory of the creator that manifests every atom of this universe. They don't become instruments for material enjoyment. They are sublimated to perceive God in everything. You're not restraining your senses anymore. So we'll go deeper into this. It doesn't make sense when you read it for the first time. What does it actually mean? Okay. And why is it important? Right? We have heard it many times, but we will look at it from a scriptural reference. Why? There is a science behind it. Why this method would work as well, and what is the pitfall of the other method is what we are going to look at. So you're not going to restrain your senses. In fact, you're going to employ them. Continue to do your work. The nature of the work I'm going to change. That's all. So now I'm going to ask you a question here. Which one do you find easier? Here's a gentleman guy who's stopping and holding. Somebody's asked him to apply brake and balance. Okay, somebody's riding a bicycle. He's been told to apply brake and balance. And the other guy, you simply have to turn and continue. Okay, basically the direction somebody is going, you have to stop. That is the intent. Okay, now somebody is simply putting a brake and he's asked to balance, and the other person is turning and continuing to ride. Which one do you think? Which one would you prefer if you are a cyclist? Let's hear from participants.
Sandhya ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe, turning and continuing to ride. That's easier. And also, I also received a chat message from Manjuji. She also says the same.
But we may have some brave hearts who will prefer something else. So let's hear if there is anybody who wants to take that other route.
Sam ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
The second one, turning and continuing to ride, that way they can change the direction. At the same time, the guy is having the helmet also, that's the separate issue. The first one, as soon as you brake, it'll topple you down in the front somewhere. So that's not the right thing. Right one, the right side is a better side, easier. Rather.
Great point. Anybody who agrees to disagree or disagrees to agree? Or agree to agree?
I see a couple of more hand raised,
and then continue. Because we'll get a little deeper into this discussion. It's a very, very interesting conversation we're going to have. So it's maybe one or two more hands.
Okay, Ramaji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. I prefer the first one, to stop and hold, and then it means to pause and think about what I'm doing and then continue.
Good point. All right, anybody else who wants to do the same or have an alternate opinion? Then maybe there's a third option we have not explored here.
Kumarji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe, I kind of remember my first experience with a bicycle, and this was my dad's bicycle, which means I couldn't reach the, I couldn't reach with my legs, I couldn't reach the ground, right? So I had this experience, they said, okay, if you have to stop, put the brakes. And I did that while I initially was training in a playground. I did the first thing. And then I fell headlong. Luckily, nothing happened. It was tough ground, but nothing happened. But then I learned that, okay, you just have to kind of move around and turn, and it's much easier.
Yep, very true. Yeah, legs not touching the ground is a perennial challenge I have faced because of my height. But now I've kind of made peace with it. Okay, I've gotten shorter height bikes and all that stuff that I started driving later on in point. One more hand we can take, Payalji, real quick, and then we'll continue with our conversation.
Radhe, Radhe,
Yes.
Payalji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. So I do agree with Sandhya ji and Shyamji that turning and continuing to ride, because in this there's a less possibility of falling because you can balance yourself. But if you forcefully stop, then there's a possibility of fall. So that's what I
Yeah.
perceive. Yeah.
Great. So let's continue on this concept. So if you look at it, holding and stopping and holding, one is when you do that, it's kind of an unstable position you get into, right? Similarly, if you do the other aspect of it, it's not an unstable condition. You can deftly maneuver it left or right. At least relatively, it's not that, right? So your motion is maintained, and at the same time, you are balanced. Similarly, if you look at it, there's an analogy. In the negation of the senses is the first approach, and turning and continuing to ride is the bhakti yoga, where you're not negating the senses, because that's an unnatural state for our mind. If we try to negate our senses, we are trying to put a brake to something which is in motion and which likes to stay in motion. Our mind, it's an unstable state for our mind. If we say, I'm not going to think anything, if you're not going to think anything, your mind will think, I'm not thinking anything. Okay, but just getting to that state is a kind of an unstable state and exceedingly difficult. So, and continuing to engage your senses, but meaningfully, is the key. And that is the key difference between Hatha Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. In Bhakti Yoga, you are saying, all right, I honor your nature and I'm going to tap into your nature. In Hatha Yoga says, no, I'm going to be stubborn around this thing. Hatha means being, and then I'm going to control you through my willpower. I'm not saying it is a bona fide path. A lot of Hatha Yogis are there. We'll look at some of the other aspects of both of these paths. So first one, I hope that point is clear. Swamiji gives this beautiful example. Now, if you look at this shloka, I think it's in Bhagavatam, where it says that when we indulge our senses, all the five senses. If you look at it, taste, touch, watch, hear, all that stuff in material things. So in this particular shloka, this is the second line of the shloka that we are doing, which says, Shabdadin Indriya Anya Indriyagnishu Juhvati. So this means offer it to the fire of senses. Which fire of senses? Senses or the Indriyas of God Himself. You offer your senses, sensory gratification to that. When you start offering it to the fire of senses, when we are talking about fire of senses, now we are talking about when we start satisfying the Indriya of God, then our senses will automatically become shant. Otherwise, they will never become shant. It will only lead to greed. That is how it works. God senses, how does it work? God can hear from His eyes, taste from His ears. Right? In Ramayana, it is said, Bin pag chalohu sunehu binu kana. So without feet, God can walk. Without ear, He can listen. He has innumerable hands, legs, and everything. He's a silent witness to every thought of ours. Like Prabhu Vyapak Sarvatra Samana. So when we start catering to the senses of the God, then our senses will automatically become shant, will become satisfied. Until then, these senses will continue to torment you. You can forcefully restrain them, as a brahmacharya, as a grihastha, or whatever we spoke about, but it's not going to be, it's a game, it's a losing battle for most part. Your experience will tell you. Okay, you don't have to go there. Our scriptures are telling us it's only when you start satisfying, because God is known to be the supreme enjoyer. So when you start catering to that, then your senses will say, all right, now we are getting what we are looking for and I have no more craving. So those seeds for self-seeking will start diminishing over time until you burn it completely. So this verse is very interesting. Indriyagnishu means that indriyas of God himself. Those you put your senses to the fire of the senses of God itself. That is the only way to satiate your senses, no other way. You will never be able to satiate your senses, as scriptures are telling us. No matter what you give it to them, it'll come back with redoubled intensity, or it will again come back to torment you, even though you have thought you've conquered it. Okay. So this is the key concept here. We keep feeding it with material stuff, new movie, new music, new scoop that is there in the market, right? New aroma that you want to experiment with. That is not really going to take us too far. It will still keep hankering for more and different. Our mind has a novelty bias as well, right? And that novelty, is there an end to a novelty? Novelty itself means newness. And the only thing which is ever fresh, new, is God, basically. It will continue seeking for material things, otherwise it will never say, yes, now I'm done. Never. It is said that even if your desire were to be of the size of the God, still it will remain. That is how, as long as it is a material desire. Okay, I'll qualify it with material desire. Yes, spiritual desire is a good thing. So the same thing which is harming us in the material realm becomes our asset on the spiritual realm. If desire troubles you and if it becomes spiritual desire, there's no better asset than that. If greed troubles you and you become greedy for more spiritual knowledge and more, for darshan of God, nothing like that. If anger troubles you and you become angry at the fact that you're not progressing, even though all the stars are aligning, it's an asset. So each thing in the material thing realm can actually become our asset in the spiritual realm. So the key point here is our senses, two things that come out of it. If you restrain them forcefully, we will revisit that again. They can rear their head without you knowing it. One of my uncles, he was telling me the story that he used to drink in his early years. Every evening he'll have a small drink. Like a lot of people have that habit. As soon as the sun sets, something inside them says, okay, I need to have that. Otherwise, I don't know what's going to happen. So he was in that habit until one day his daughter, she asked him, why do you have to do that? Okay, I don't like you doing it. So he was so touched by her, he just quit that day. He said, I'm not going to drink. Okay, my own daughter doesn't like it. And she said it so innocently that it really struck him and he stopped. After that day, he would not touch drinks. Then after 30 years, there was in his office, they invited him and said, okay, you are one of the few people we want to send to Germany for some kind of a conference. So he started and he had another friend of him who was seated next to him. And this guy was a teetotaler. He had never, drunk or smoked or things like that. But then because they were in the first class, they were offered complimentary drinks and that nice hospitality was laid out in front of them. So this guy who had never tasted or touched, he started having it lavishly just because it was an offer, free, right? Free, you know how people go after free things. And this uncle of mine, he said that at that moment, I said, okay, this guy has never tasted and then enjoying his life. Let me just do that. And he started doing it again. And that made him realize that even though he had stopped doing it, after 25, 30 years, that seed was still there. It was still not burnt. So through our intellectual practice, through our willpower, we can do only so much. We have still not burnt the seeds. And the only way to satiate that or burn those seeds is to direct that towards God. Only God is capable of burning those seeds. We are not, through our self-efforts, because these seeds are energy of God. They are Maya's lieutenants, right? So we cannot really conquer them on our own, whichever practice, austerity, tap, jap, whatever we do. Let's continue. Now, let's look at the sublimation aspect of it. We keep talking about sublimation, right? It's a chemistry term where something transitions from solid to gaseous state, it skips the intermediate state. Maybe if there's a chemistry professor here, they can correct me. I think this is what I understand. One of the few things I understood in science. So it's like camphor, right? You heat it and it directly becomes gaseous. It doesn't go to the intermediate stage. Similarly, the sublimation of senses aspect, if you look at it, basically it means you don't really have to go through this hierarchy of tamas to rajas to sattva. You can take a flight to gunatit when you start directing it towards God. That is sublimation. Okay, it's not a step by step process where you go here and then there. Similarly, it's not like first you be brahmacharya. Obviously, you have to go through that stage when we are studying, but then you have to be a grihast, and then you have to be a vanprasth, and then only you can go there. No, nothing of that sort. Okay, those rules and regulations have been laid out just for the people so that they don't keep on extending their animal life. From 8.4 million, the things that we have gotten habituated to, we don't continue doing when we become human. So they have put some kind of a lamppost or traffic lights around that okay, do this, restrain is a big buzzword. But people who make the priorities, the spiritual growth as their priority or God realization as their priority, they can actually sublimate their desire and dovetail their entire life towards this practice without really having to worry about which station or stage of life they are in. Yes, Manjuji, you had a question?
Please go ahead, Manjuji. Are you able to?
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Nitinji, you told this Gunatita. This time first time I'm hearing this one. Like I'm aware of Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva. So Sattvic is the highest what I had thought till now. So what do you mean like Gunatita? Is it like towards surrendering ourselves towards the God?
The God is called Nirguna.
Okay.
Okay, so it is also called Shuddha Sattva. Sattva is also binding. Sattva is also tainted.
Okay.
Sattva is the mode of goodness. If you limit yourself to Sattva, you will get better life. You may get celestial abodes, but you will not go across Maya. So God is called Gunatit because he's Shuddha Sattva. He's beyond gunas. And only when you do something which is Gunatit, even beyond Sattva, then you are doing true Karam Yoga, and then you are really attaching your mind to God. Otherwise, you are still in the material realm. All these three gunas are in material realm. Gunatit is beyond material realm. It is transcendental. I hope you understand. So this is a concept I think we have discussed in great details, but we can revisit that again. Material energy has all the three gunas. It's only when you start transcending material energy, you state Gunatit. So I'll give you an example. When you do a work, if you do a work with resentment, bitterness, then you are doing that work in a tamasic mode. If you do it with an action-oriented, let's do it, I have to get it done, and with a lot of passion, then you are in a rajasic mode. If you do it with a noble sentiment that, okay, I need to contribute towards something big and larger, you are doing it in a sattvic mode. When you do it in a mode that I am doing it for the pleasure of God, because God has endowed me with these abilities, then it becomes Gunatit. So it's just your consciousness which changes, which will give you the result accordingly. So the more we do Gunatit, Chintan, the more closer we get to God, the more closer we get to surrender, the more purified our heart becomes. And then we are not accruing any more karma as well. Even if you are doing it in a mode of goodness, you are still accruing karma, which is a binding karma. Pap and punya, both are binding. When you go beyond punya, then it is non-binding. That is the key concept to be understood. Hope that answered your question. Okay, thank you. Yes, Hemlata ji, you also had a question.
Please go ahead, Hemlata ji.
Sure, thank you. Yes, Nitinji, I had a question. I mean, you said that about the senses, satisfying the senses of Krishna would actually satisfy ours. What's the process? I mean, how do we actually satisfy the senses of Lord? I mean, how does that work? I mean, I didn't get that process. Maybe I didn't hear it or something like that. So I just wanted to check with you.
Satisfying the senses of God means each sense of God does the work of the other sense. Okay, so when you taste something, so first of all, we have to admit or acknowledge that our senses are nonsense completely. Okay, So when we start doing things for the pleasure of God, it's like you don't indulge in taste for your own satisfaction. You indulge in eating that so that I can have nutritious food, stay healthy, so that I can do seva and sadhana. You start channelizing every act towards God, and it starts giving you bliss and joy and happiness. It doesn't make it boring in life. Okay, that's a key principle. And if you are hearing something, you say, all right, my ear should really yearn for God's name and stuff like that, as opposed to the latest Bollywood flick I can get my ears towards. So everything can actually be directed towards the pleasure of God. That consciousness has to be built. You don't have to change your act drastically. If you can sing, okay, I might as well sing for the glories of God, or to glorify him, or for his service. Right? Lata Mangeshkar used to say, I'm not saying she used to do that way, but she always used to think that this has been a boon or some kind of a gift from God that she has been given. So she has to discharge it to the best of her abilities, and she cannot take it for granted. So if you direct it towards God, that becomes giving pleasure to his senses. Right? So it's not that first I have to give pleasure to God's tongue and then eyes and ears. Any sense you give, it basically makes up for other senses as well. So the bottom line is that when we start indulging senses for our own gratification, that becomes binding. So bhog leads to yog, and instead of bhog, we need to move towards yog, which is sacrifice. It's a bit of a psychological, mental sacrifice that you are doing, tweaking your intention. That's all God is asking for, and that will make all the difference. It will translate bhog into yog when you start thinking of it that I'm doing it for the pleasure of God. I'm doing it so that I can stay healthy. I'm doing it so that it can please God. I'm bringing out my best, right? It said that what God gives us is gift to us. What we do with it is our gift back to him. So each one of us is endowed with a script or a music by God. That is his gift to us. Realizing that script and music and be able to, serve God is our gift back to him. But that mindset is not there. We always think about enjoying. If I'm earning, it's because I want to enjoy the next vacation in Hawaii. Right? When we start earning more, we tend to raise the standard of our living, not the standard of our giving. So all that needs to be adjusted, essentially what God is saying. For your senses, just let them take a back seat. Otherwise, they'll keep on tormenting you lifetime after lifetime. I hope I answered at least
Okay. Yes, Nitinji, I'm getting it. So in every act that we do, we should have Lord in our mind, and then we have to proceed, right? That then our senses will take the back seat.
Will take a back seat, and you will derive more pleasure out of it. See, we are tapping into divine, which is the source of all the happiness and bliss. So it's not that now your life will become boring. Okay, you will actually feel much more pleasure and joy and bliss and peace out of it. You just have to practice that. That is what God is saying. And eventually, it is a stepping stone to the desired target state. What is the desired target state? Sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmar, ananyas chintayantu mam. So these statements that Lord Krishna is saying basically, not even for a moment you are separated from me. That consciousness finally we have to build, whether we do it now, whether in later age, whether in next lifetime. That is the stage we have to reach. So when we start building this consciousness, obviously it will build our sanskars, and we'll start getting better and better and better at it. And one day we might surprise ourselves that, God is always there in my mind. In fact, I have to take God out at times, step down to operate effectively in this world. That state can reach as well. And that is a good problem to have if it starts happening. We don't have to worry about it. Okay.
Thank you, Nitinji. Thank you so much.
Yes, Samji.
Please go ahead, Samji.
Radhe Radhe. Yeah, for Hemlataji's question that she asked, she was asking about how it takes place, the purification. If we direct our actions towards God, then senses will get purified. I think it is designed that way, and it has to be practically experienced by implementing. It cannot be described how the purification takes place. Like Maharaj also says, if we direct our actions to someone whom we love in the material world, whatever their gunas will come to us.
Beautiful. Very nice point. And it is just like a principle of fire. When you put anything in fire. Fire purifies it. So same thing. It is a fire of sacrifice that you do. It will purify it. That is how it works. And what did you say, Samji? Last part you had answered, and that something came to my mind. Maharajji said,
Gunas of others will come to us if we.
the gunas of others come to us. So what is meditation? If you think about it, meditation is deeply contemplating about something. And when you deeply contemplate about something, right, for an extended period of time, you acquire the gunas of that object. Now, where is our mind for most part of the day? There are not you may say multiple areas. Sometimes it's at my work, sometimes I'm thinking about some relation, sometimes I'm thinking about some ongoing problem, sometimes what is the next thing I'm going to do. All that is fine. But if you look at it, it is all world. There are only two areas as such. One is God's area, one is the world's area. So if majority of our time goes in the chintan of world, so we end up getting the same object. We end up getting the object of our contemplation. That is the rule of God. So finally, we have to reach a stage where people start calling you mad person, where you're thinking about God all the times, but still knowing how to operate effectively in this world. That stage when you reach, then your object of meditation has become God. And then you can realize God. Otherwise, you will realize the object of your meditation. Even if you're not meditating like this, you're still thinking about world, right? And that becomes your meditation throughout the worldly objects, worldly subjects. So Lord Krishna is saying you start building that consciousness towards me. Every action is directed, okay, like Gopi's thing was there, right? Every action, Jit dekhu tit sham mein, Krishna is here, Krishna is there. So that consciousness is pretty elevated, but the stepping stone to that is to start diverting your day-to-day acts, your senses, your cravings towards God. And that is a tool that God is giving us. And that will please God, and then that will set us fast track towards this journey as well. So let's move on. We spoke about this concept as well, sublimation. Now let's move on to the next one. Now in 7.8, Lord Krishna is also saying, Rasoham apu apsu konteya, know me to be the taste in water. So bhakti yogis, they behold God through all their senses and everything they see, hear, taste, feel, and smell. That is the state we have to reach. And this devotion, yagna, is simpler than the path of Hatha Yoga, if you look at it, because it is joyous to perform. You're not going against your natural state of engaging your mind and senses. Like now we are creating so many reels out of Bollywood music. Is it not joyous? It is enjoyable, but you have diverted that towards a larger purpose. That is the beauty of Raganuga Bhakti. And involves a smaller risk of downfall from the path. The other big variable that we have to keep in mind is it will safeguard your interest on the path as well, because now you have brought in the most important ingredient into the mix, which is God's grace. In Hatha Yoga, there is no concept of grace. It is you, me, myself, and me only, right? Where you are saying through my willpower and this and that, I am going to negate my senses and conquer them. I am going to deny my senses and keep on denying it. And where is the concept of God there? Nobody's thinking about God there. Hatha Yoga is all about your own willpower, exercise of willpower, why power, whatever it is. So in this path, when you start diverting it towards God, you are actually, it's like killing two birds with one stone. You're not only meaningfully diverting your senses, but also building sanskars, consciousness about God. It's like such a beautiful thing to do, because that is the final thing. Even a Hatha Yogi will finally understand that he had to surrender to God. So you are doing that right from the word go. That is the beauty of path of bhakti. It's not that in later stages you come to know. You build it ground up. Your foundation includes that everything has to be diverted towards God. It's because of God's grace. So when you start tapping into God's grace, miraculous things can happen. Now you're saying, okay, grace is the key. And then God will take care, God and Guru take care of your yoga kshema and course correction, and you have essentially become a billi ka bacha, okay, rather than a bandar ka bacha. Okay, so it's good to be Markat Kishore Nyaya and Marjar Kishore Nyaya we've spoken about. So when you take this approach, you have essentially given the ownership of your journey to your God and Guru, and they are more than happy to help you along. They are waiting to free up their arms for you. We are only restricting them, but they can open up their arms only when we do certain things. And by doing this practice, by increasing our Sharanagati, we are actually opening up their hands so that they can give us more and more and more. So that is essentially the principle. This is the key thing. We are tapping into the grace, which can make the entire difference. So here, if you look at it, our senses, and then you bring to your senses. Previously, what was your mind was there. It was saying, I need this, I need that, I need. You start replacing this with Krishna. Krishna becomes the center of your senses, as you see here. And then magical things will start happening around it. Okay, let's move on. Now here you see a serpent who went a tooth extraction. Have you seen a serpent who has gone through a tooth extraction? So that's what happens. Our senses are like this serpent. But when you start dovetailing it in bhakti, it's like you've extracted all its tooth, venom, everything. This is the beauty of the path of devotion. Any questions or anything so far? We can take those. I know we are pretty. So by the way, the retreat is starting tomorrow. So tomorrow's session is off because it's going to conflict with that. If you have not joined, please sign up. I signed it up today, chapter 7. I'm going to take notes and you guys all can take notes and send it to me for chapter 7. Okay. And then I'll bring it into slides and add some more color to it. So please do sign up if you're not. It's at a very nominal price. So tomorrow's session is off. We'll start Monday as usual, Tuesday morning, India. And other events that are coming, I think Pallaviji, you can talk about that. We have Janmashtami coming up, we have NTP program coming up, and then we have Dallas retreat coming up. So a lot of good events to look forward to, and the retreat is going to start. So please do sign up if you haven't already. With that, I want to take a few questions if anybody has, and then take the discussion forward. Anything so far? So this serpent example I really liked. It's like when you take away the fangs of that serpent, then it becomes harmless. In India, they bring a lot of snakes near. I still get scared, but if they don't have teeth and they don't have venom, they're harmless at that point. And that is what devotion path can actually do. In the Hatha Yoga path, the diametrically opposite path, you cannot trust it. When the snake will bring out that teeth that was not truly extracted but grew back again. So that can happen. Any questions or any?
There are messages here. There are a lot of messages, Nitinji. But I see Samji's hand raised, so I'll take a question first. Yeah.
Role today, asking. Go ahead, please.
I did not understand also.
No, go ahead, please.
Okay. So I too heard this analogy, Nitinji. It, like in other procedures paths where we use our self-restraint to control the senses, it is like stamping snake with foot. For the time being, it will seem like it is under control, but as soon as you remove the foot, it will spring up and bite you. So the only solution is to remove its stings, so that even if you leave them, it won't be poisonous.
Very true. So all other paths are treacherous. It's like walking on a sword. You have to be very, very careful throughout it because you have taken the ownership of safeguarding your own journey. So everything is dependent, and then God grace is cut out. So in fact, in all the paths, you finally have to surrender to God. Even if you go to Advaitis, they talk about Ishwar. You have to surrender to Ishwara. So surrender to God, there is no way out without surrendering to God. You think that I will, and then surrendering to God, we don't even know what surrender means truly. It's just an English word for us. Only Guru can explain you what is the surrender. Not explain you, but can work on you to tell you now your surrender is increasing and not. With our effort alone, we cannot even understand what surrender is and how far we have progressed in surrender. And the day we surrender, immediately we get God's grace. Immediately, there's no delay whatsoever. The day we are Sharanagat, not even a second's delay is there. Immediately it happens, right? Draupadi's example is there in Mahabharata. The moment she surrendered, God immediately intervened. Immediately intervened. For as long as she was not surrendered, she was going with her own, bul, that my husband and all the people around, the courthouse elders, and her own strength. God did not come. The moment she surrendered, He came. So that is the principle of God, that He has put the ownership back on us. I'm willing to do this. You need to increase your surrender, and your proportion of grace will increase with the proportion of your surrender as well. Now, this thing, so we cannot do it on our own. Another reason for you to go for God, Guru, that like our scriptures explain. Do we know if this much surrender I have to do? Where am I right now? Can I tell that I'm here or here or here, or what else I need to do to increase my surrender? How many layers of selfishness do I have? What is my impediment? Okay, how, if this much clean I need to do my heart, have I done this much, this much, this much? These answers are very, very, what do you call that, esoteric to, very difficult to understand. Only a guru can work on you and tell you and take you on this journey. So that is why the role of guru becomes even more important, because Sharanagati, until we do the Sharanagati, because if you look at Bhagavad Gita, after going through everything, the executive statement or the key thing finally Lord Krishna talks about is Sarva dharmam parityajya mam ekam sharanam braj. That is the sense of Bhagavad Gita. But to reach that stage, it takes a lot. He says, forget about all the dharma, simply surrender to me. What is surrender? Surrender is something like, Swamiji says, is it a garland that, like we said, we'll do, okay, I'm surrendered now? It is a consciousness that you create, you carry. It's not an act or a word. And that consciousness cannot be done in a unit step function that we wake up and now I'm surrendered God. No, it's a process. You have to go through that process, practice things, take baby steps, and then start realizing the benefits until our Sharanagati is complete. And only Guru can lead you to that Sharanagati. Our self-effort, we don't even know where we are, to be honest. Yes, anybody else? Any questions?
Can I take messages? Can I take questions from the chat?
Sure.
Yeah.
I see Manoranjan ji, so let's hear from him as well.
Okay, Manoranjan.
Yeah, you can read out and then we can take Manoranjan ji.
Okay. So Rahul ji has first mentioned eat, sleep, drink, sham. So that's what he has texted. Yeah. Ramya ji has messaged, somehow my doubts are reducing class by class. Initially, I used to have many questions. Now my mind doesn't question any concepts. It's like acceptance.
Is it Shri Ramya or Ramya ji?
Shri Ramya. Yeah.
Wonderful. That means God's, something has started changing. That means you're approaching it with a open mind and all. Yes, questions will become shant after a while. Trust me, it will happen. I have experienced it. And I used to think the amount of questions I have, one lifetime is not enough to get those resolved. And within a few months, everything became shant. And it's just about now, what do I need to do and how fast I can do that. So it will happen. It's a very great realization, Sri Ramya. And thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure a lot of participants here will be experiencing as well. Questions will quieten down after a while. And everything will just start. Something that seems like a grape will seem like a football after a while. Okay, that is how it starts happening.
Urviji has a question though.
Yes, Urviji. Urvi is going to ask a tough question, I know. So please go ahead.
I wanted to ask that devotees who are sakam, do they not get the Param Shakti of God? Like Mirabai, Draupadi, etc. They were not Nishkam. So did they not get the Prema Shakti? Prem Shakti.
They also, God makes them, see, the good thing about with God realization is, even if you realize God as a Sakam Bhakt means where you are thinking about your own happiness. Kubja also was one of them. Rukmini and Lakshmi, they are 50-50 for themselves and as well as for their husband, for God as well. And gopis were the highest level. So yes, the bliss aspect of it, like say for example, Maharaj, the Sakam Bhakts will not get that chance. So it's like even within bliss, you have many categories. Prema Shakti, right? Prema Shakti, once you get it, within Prema Shakti also, there are many levels. Bitter, better, better, butter, right? So many levels and gradations are there. So yes, of course, they will get Prema Shakti. See, when you realize God as your beloved, even if it is Sakam, it is one of the highest blisses. But then within that bliss also, there are so many categories. God has, like, you say that there are three kinds of gopis, Sadharani Rati, Samanjasya Rati, and Samartha Rati. Within Samartha Rati also, right, you have Rud Bhav and Adhirud Mahabhav. And Adhirud Mahabhav also, you have different categories, Madanakya, Modan, Mad. So there is no limit basically in God's realm. So Sakam will lose out on the higher bliss of God. I shouldn't say that. I mean, Sakam will also get Prem, but they will, within Prem, the even finer and subtler rases, they will probably miss out on. That much it is. Because Nishkam is even higher than Sakam. It's like sweet sugarcane juice and sweeter sugarcane juice and even sweeter and sweeter kind of a deal. There's no dearth of levels and gradations in Bhakti. Right? There's no Purnima in Bhakti. So many levels are there. You cannot say I perfected my Bhakti. You can continue relishing the bliss and it will keep on increasing. So I hope I answered your question, Urvi. So they will still get Prema Shakti, but not at the level which a Nishkam Bhakt would get.
I think, yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Nitinji. I'll take the next. Manoranjanji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe, Namaskaram to all of you. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are.
Namaskaram.
Yeah. First of all, thank you to the entire team for bringing this beautiful concept every morning or evening in USA. Thanks for that. So when we are discussing on this concept, let us try to understand that we all human beings actually are the representatives of the Almighty in this planet. Therefore, our prime aim should be participating in the creation, preservation, and destruction of the entire universe. What actually the God does. We are his representatives, as we should work as his representatives. So the concept is that we can use all our senses for our own gratification. That is genuine. But we should overcome this genuinity and we should use our senses for the betterment of this society, the betterment of this world. For example, we all eat to sustain our life. But if you see, when a mother eats, when a mother is carrying a child and she eats, she not only eats for herself, she also eats for the baby. Now see, the concept of yajna comes here. Mother is eating for the betterment of the baby, right? Not only for herself, but betterment of the baby. Similarly, a soldier, he can stay in his cantonment and watch a movie. Okay, it will satisfy his gratification center. But at the same time, he says, no, I will not watch a movie. I will go to the borders and I will be vigilant. I will be a watchdog. There is some enemy and that. Okay, now here the concept changes. It becomes a yajna. And when you are doing yajna, it is all for paropakara. It is all for what actually God wants us to do. So if you use your senses in such an aspect and you think your thought process changes, so then it will be very helpful for all of us to achieve our highest goal in our life. So therefore, we should all work towards this concept. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manoranjanji. Very nice. We are using our senses for a larger purpose. Rather than for our selfish purpose. That's a great concept, yes. And when we talk about larger, the largest purpose again becomes God, right? Again goes back to the fundamentals. What are our dharmas? There are two categories of dharma, paradharma and aparadharma. So for as long as we are in this consciousness, we are this body, we have to do these duties to the best of our abilities without being selfish. But when we talk about the topmost duty of a soul, it is to love God and to serve God. But not most of us, I mean, majority are in that consciousness. That is why we have different scriptures tell us Varnashram Theorem and stuff like that, where you at least start becoming responsible and conscious about your duties as a human, where you think yourself as a body. Once you start understanding you're a soul, then there is no dharma other than loving God and serving God. There's absolutely no other dharma. That is what Krishna is telling as well, right? Towards the end. Sarv dharmam parityajya mamekam sharanam bharat. For a soul, no duty whatsoever once you start thinking of yourself as a soul. So we will continue on this discussion. Great point. I think Rahul has raised his hand as well.
Yes, Rahulji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe. Just wanted to add a point on that Sakam Bhakti. Maharaj ji has always mentioned that Sakam Bhakti निंदनी नहीं है लेकिन वंदनी भी नहीं है, इसीलिए निष्काम भक्ति पे फोकस करना.
Yeah, Maharaj ji always says when you have to get a prize, don't settle for anything less than the topmost one. Okay, so nindani nahi hai, but vandaniya bhi nahi hai. Very nice. Right? They because there's a trace of selfishness there. Like kubja, if we do sakam bhakti, we will get sanskars of kubja. If we do nishkam bhakti, we will get sanskars of gopi, and gopi is the topmost a jiva atma could get into. Right? Even sakam bhakts, they didn't get chance in the Maharas. Sharad Purnima is the topmost thing, right? Because that is when the jiva atmas, they realize their true potential of divine bliss. But sakam bhakts did not get that. So they get deprived from that because nishkamta is at a different level. And if you go deeper into these concepts like sanyog, viyog and all that, like that de do mujhe aisi virah vedana, other day I was reading through that, mit jaye mam aham chetana. So virah vedana and all that stuff only nishkam bhakts get, not the sakam bhakt. They always get the union bliss. But the separation bliss is considered as even more than the union bliss. But that is somebody who is totally nishkam. In fact, this concept nishkam itself is very uplifting. If you look at Sikhism, they focus on nishkam seva. It is not so. Even if you don't do anything, you just start building nishkam sanskars of nishkamta, right? By doing menial services, washing utensils, serving people, putting slippers or shoes in place in a religious place or a gurudwara or a temple. These activities itself will purify you big time. And the lower the activity, the higher the purification. So don't lose out on an opportunity to do the cleaning stuff in a temple, washing utensils, putting shoes in order. These are very, very purifying activities. So a sadhak, devotees, they never let go of such kind of opportunities. Okay, so when I say ladki wale, we have become, so don't lose out of any of such opportunity wherever you can do that, because it is very purifying on the path of spirituality.
Beautifully said. I think Urvi has another follow-up question. I would request Urvi ji, if you can raise your hand, I can unmute you so that you can go ahead with further discussion, if you can. Meanwhile, today it's not possible for her. So if you can put your question, I can try reading it. There are a lot of them. Thank you. iPhone Ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Sorry, that's me, Padma. I couldn't change it. I just
You in disguise of iPhone name, Padma Ji.
I was driving and I couldn't change, but I joined really late. But catching up on one thing, from experience, and this is from my childhood. Dad used to practice this, right? I used to live in a community where it was all culture, just not one culture, but everybody, like Christian, Muslims, which it was all mixed, and we never had that separation. And anything happening, every day, like bunch of kids from the community, they would just come in the morning and evening when Dad used to pray, and they would just sit in the hall, and by the time he would open the eyes and turn back, he would find like bunch of kids waiting for prasad. That was one beautiful thing that I think where I can bring back or draw back to just the last thing that Nitinji was saying, which is when you're doing service, right? When you compartmentalize of of what you want to do. I want to do only this kind of stuff, that kind of stuff. I don't want to wash dishes. I don't want to do this kind of stuff at temple. Even if you're not trained to do that, even if your mind is not conditioned to do that, maybe because you were raised like that, or maybe your ego is like that, for whatever reason, you're not comfortable doing that. Maybe you are not raised to do certain kind of things. But once you attempt to do those kind of things, those are the ones that will really give you greater benefits spiritually. I'm saying they will give you the greatest benefits, because those are the places where you would be challenged to challenge your own ego. When you're willing to challenge your own ego, that dispersion or the distribution of the ego, when it happens from the place of really like the very lowest seva that we have conditioned in our mind, like whatever the lowest things is, that will give you the greatest benefits of how you can actually challenge your own mindset and conditions and egos and boundaries that we have for ourselves. And when we start to doing those most conditioned thing, the kind of sevas that we don't want to do, you will get the greatest benefits, and your experiences spiritually and your liberation from your own mindsets and ego, you will see that dispersing, and the cobwebs that you will have in your mind will disperse much more quicker and faster than what you would anticipate. Luckily for me, I have the family that I come from, or the environment that I come from, that gave me that kind of opportunity. But if we don't have that kind of opportunity, when it comes to that, take a challenge and just do that. That will really give you much macro evolutions in spirituality, I feel. Radhe Radhe. Thank you.
Even seva, what happens is we form our comfort zone. This is what I want to do. This is what I don't want to do. Right? Somebody was telling me the other day that, are you attached to your seva? I said, that's a good question. I've never asked. I think it will really be tested if somebody tells me to stop it, right? Then I'll know, okay. So that is the testing. And then Guru basically can actually challenge you at times where we have to shed our thing that, okay, I like to do this, but I'll have to do it, because they're saying that is the way to progress, basically. Because we are not serving ourselves. Even in seva, we start doing our own seva after a while, forgetting that end of the day we are doing it for the Guru, right? Because it appeals to us. I want to do it this way. So we got to be careful about all these pitfalls. Anyway, iPhone, it reminded me, I has a lot of ego in it, right? Samsung is Shamsung. So that is, I think, but anyways, I have an iPhone as well these days. So it's just a energy of God. You can dovetail it as well in your mind. Great point. Anybody else had any question, or we are good for the day now? 10:10, we can wrap it up. Sashitoshi. Yes, bring on the beautiful verse that you're going to sing now.
Radhe Radhe. Please go ahead, Ashutosh.
We are talking about dovetailing the desires and all those things. So Maharaj ji written beautiful words in Bhakti Satak.
Yeah.
काम क्रोध मद लोभ कहाँ मन मूरख मत छोड़ राधे राधे रसिक शिरोमणि श्याम ढिंग दे इनके मुख मोड़ राधे राधे जय राधे कृष्ण राधे 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 कृष्ण राधे.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Everything can be directed towards Krishna. And in God's area, nothing is bad. Everything, you can take all the liberties with God in whatever way you want. Everything becomes pure. And God has given us full freedom for that. Great. Wonderful. Manjuji, you had a question? Another question?
Thank you, Ashutosh ji. Manjuji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Nitinji, I just wanted to know the class schedule. Will this class be every day or how?
Yes, this class is every day, Monday to Friday. Tomorrow we'll not have because we have a conflict with the retreat. However, we meet every Monday to Friday, 9 to 10 Central Time. So please do join and invite your friends and family as well. We have a wonderful group, as you would have seen.
Yes.
And we go really slow in every shloka.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really like it. Was very much enjoyable, and it was very much beneficial actually. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure to have
you,
you. Look forward to hearing more from you, Manjuji.
Thank you. Thank you. CDT timing, right?
CDT, Central Timing, yes. I think it will be 2 hours before you, right? If you're in California, it will be 7 p.m., I believe.
Yeah, 7 p.m. 7 p.m.
We meet every day. It's a daily satsang that we do.
Thank you so much, Nitinji. It was really very wonderful.
Pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Nitinji, Ankurji has asked how to sign up for the session for tomorrow, the life transformation session for tomorrow. And I have posted the link in the chat though.
It is for the retreat actually. It is the retreat in the West Coast retreat. Swamiji is going to take on chapter 7 of Bhagavad Gita.
I have posted the link for that as well.
You can check the link and sign up for it. I think it's a very nominal price. So do sign up if you have not already. Do not miss out on that opportunity. And tomorrow's session is not on because of the conflict there, and we'll resume next week. All right. Are we good?
Yes, I don't see any hand raised. Oh no, sorry, Manoranjanji's hand is raised. If we can take.
You can raise your hand as well. We're going to recite shortly afterwards. Surendraji, here's your opportunity as well.
Yeah, Nitinji, I have a question. Actually, I was during the course of discussion.
Sure.
You said that what we should do is for the pleasure of God. But the question arises that pleasure and pain are same for the God. He never injects, he never engages pleasure or pain. Because in Bhagavad Gita, in the chapter 4, he says, Name karmani limpanti, name karme phale spruha. He is not bothered about if you are giving pleasure or pain. So how do you say that we should work for the pleasure of God? He is not bothered.
Okay. Pleasure. God is beyond pleasure and pain. Yes.
Absolutely.
God is beyond pleasure and pain. Yes, right. So then what do we do for basically when we say we have to dovetail it? Now God also, see, you picked up that shloka, right? There's another part which our scriptures say God is Atma Krida, Atma Rati, and Atma Ram. So God does not need anything plus or minus in terms of pleasure or pain. Okay, nothing can minus his pleasure, nothing can add to his pleasure. Right? However, God has two kinds of pleasure. One is the pleasure that he himself has, and second is the pleasure he can seek when he's seated within you, which is called Swarup Shakyanand pleasure. That is higher than the pleasure that he has. So if you go deeper into scriptures, it talks about that concept. So the devotee, when he starts offering his stuff to God, God doesn't need it. He's saying, help me help you. But the purity and the bliss that you receive from God, and when God receives it seated within you, it's even higher than the bliss of God himself. Okay, that is a deeper scriptural understanding of this principle. But you cannot subtract his pleasure, nor can you inflict pain on him. Very true. That is a true concept. However, that's one half of the picture only. If you look at it, this picture in entirety. All right. We can recite that shloka then.
Yes, sure. Lisa ji has mentioned, thank you so much, Nitinji. I enjoyed the discussion very much and look forward to attend regularly.
Thank you, Lisa ji. Where are you joining us from? Look forward to hearing more from you, and please fill out the feedback tracker if you have something in particular, and if you have any questions, and bring in your friends and family as well. We have a beautiful satsang group. I would not miss out this session for anything. So if you keep attending, you'll feel the same. That much I can promise you. So thank you very much.
Asha ji has also said thanks, Nitinji. It was awesome session.
Dhanyavad, Asha ji.
We are all set, Nitinji.
All right, let's do the closing prayers then. Thank you, everyone.
Payalji, Surendraji,
Radhe, Radhe.
please go ahead.
Can I say 4 lines for our Krishna?
Yes.
Just 4 lines.
Yes. No session is complete without your 4 lines. Okay. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hey Kanhaiya, तुम खास ही नहीं हर सांस में हो, रूबरू नहीं पर हर एहसास में हो, मिलोगे पता नहीं मगर हर तलाश में हो, तलाश पूरी हो ना हो मगर हर आस में हो. Radhe Radhe.
Do you write it yourself, Payalji?
At times.
Wonderful.
But this one is not mine. This is for sure.
This is good. Maybe you should share your compilation, with us someday. Beautiful. Very nice.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. Now I have to sing because you did that. I have to sing something also because I'm preparing for bhajan. So this is a beautiful line I came across. So it said that. So the bhajan is like, I'm not saying completely. Raghuraj kahe, Yaduraj kahe, tum roop anek dikhate ho. So basically Ram and Krishna, they are same. Sometimes we say Yaduraj, sometimes we say Raghuraj. And then it says, kabhi तीर चलाते बाणों से, कभी नैनन तीर चलाते हो. So as a Ram, he used to do bow and arrow. And as Krishna, he used to, with his eyes. And then one part which I loved was, it said that, है वास तुम्हारा घट घट में, तुम सबको नाच नचाते हो, फिर भी यशोदा के हाथों से तुम उखल में बंध जाते. So basically he's all present and he makes us dance. But then he chooses through Yashoda's hand to get tied up in that ukhal.
Great.
Love that part of it. I think we should sing more bhajans or more often, I guess. We'll do something like that, okay? And I encourage participants, if you want to come and recite a few lines, please do that. Because this discussion that we do, bhakti element, I try to bring in from, but it can become insipid at times, especially when you get into some of the yogas and some theories around it. So it's always good to balance it out with some devotional and kirtan and chanting and stuff like that. So if you are encouraged, please come around. Sandhya ji was, she sang beautifully the other day. Sandhya ji, I strongly encourage you to come back again and sing something for us. Pallavi ji is a beautiful singer, and we have a lot of aspiring singers here. So few lines from time to time, I think that will really add a good flavor to our sessions. Okay, let's do our closing prayers then.
Thank you. सर्वे सन्तु निरामया, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् भवेत्. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः.
Thank you. Radhe Radhe.
Thank you.
Have a great day and a great rest of your evening ahead. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Stay blessed, safe, and have a great weekend and a devotional time at the retreat if you're attending. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Nitinji, for another awesome session. Thank you, everyone, for participating, and have a blessed day, blessed night. Thank you so much.
Welcome to